Coffee is a big part of my day. Not only does it help me get through the morning, but I just really love the taste of good quality beans. Trade is a subscription service that brings great coffee from indie roasters all over the country right to your door. Tell Trade what you typically like, whether it's espresso or single origins or even decaf, even how you like to make your coffee, and they will recommend the right beans for you. Or you can just choose from over 450 different coffees. Then you select how often you'd like the coffee delivered to you. Shipping is always free, by the way. And if you need to skip a week or so, just do that. You can do it. No charge at all. Then pick back up when you're ready to get beans delivered to your door again. Go to unitedwedrink.com/trade to get started with Trade today and start getting some of the best coffees in the country delivered to your door. That's unitedwedrink.com/trade. The opinions and statements in this podcast do not represent those of the host's employers, coworkers, family, or imaginary friends. Now enjoy the show.
Happy hour? More like amateur hour. Welcome to United We Drink.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to a new episode of the United We Drink podcast right here on UnitedWeDrink.com, as well as Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, not Stitcher. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to a brand new episode of United We Drink right here on UnitedWeDrink.com, as well as Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, and wherever fine podcasts are found. My name is Mike Urevich, and I'm looking forward to another Red October. This is my baseball part of the podcast. Actually, I think by the time that this comes out, we will be well into postseason. I think we'll be actually at the end of the first series.
You might actually be out of the playoffs by the time.
Yeah, so I'm jinxing this. Perfect. Lovely. I'm going to stop it there. With me, as always, Kevin Abbott.
Hi, Mike. Miguel Cabrera hit a home run today.
Kevin Abbott, sorry.
Yes, Coach Kevin Abbott. I prefer manager because I will be managing my son's T-ball / coach pitch team coming up this Sunday for my first game. But as of today, talking about baseball, Miguel Cabrera is in one of his last 4 games of the season when we're recording this, and he hit a home run, only his third home run of the season at home, in front of the hometown fans, tying Mel Ott on the all-time homers list. Pretty cool.
Yeah, that is pretty cool.
Good old Miggy, man.
Do you need any help with analytics for your team? Do you have a statistician or?
I'm pretty sure Billy Bean's not doing much these days. I was thinking about reaching out to either him or Brad Pitt, whoever is more available.
Well, I don't think Brad Pitt's doing a whole lot right now either. So
maybe I can get them both.
Yeah,
GM and assistant GM.
Yeah, they're not crossing the picket lines by doing that.
That's true.
Kevin, what are you drinking here tonight?
So I've got some good old-fashioned cheap Costco Reposado tequila, which I really enjoy, and I've got an athletic light.
Oh, how is that one? I haven't had that one.
I love this. This is really good. I've sung the praises of the Budweiser NA and said it's kind of one of the best examples to me of an non-alcoholic beer because it's exactly as advertised. This is it's not surprising that Athletic would be making a better beer than Budweiser because they're a craft brewery, but this is a much better beer. It's more flavorful. It's still ridiculously refreshing. 25 calories for those of you who care about that, and I'm one of those people who cares about that. So yeah, I'll bring this on, man. I'll drink this any day of the week.
Oh, sweet. I'll have to look try to find that one. The places that around me that have Athletic only have the IPA and the Golden Ale. So maybe I'll have to go to Total Wine and search that one out.
I found this somewhere that was not Total Wine. I might have found it at an ABC around my house or something, but Yeah, it's a very impressive. It's one of the, I think the third or fourth time I bought it now.
Awesome. We actually have that Reposado in our house. Not drinking that tonight, but that's really good. We've had the Reposado and the Añejo, and strangely, I like both of them, and I'm not a tequila person.
Yeah, they're pretty good, man.
I am having our Das Fest beer from Copper Point, our take on the German Fest beer.
Got to get my hands on some of that.
Only available at the tap room. I'll grab you a 6-pack for next time I see you.
Please do.
Also have a little bit of Bullet Bourbon and a Spindrift, and I'm ready to do podcasting stuff tonight.
Oh, that for the first time in what, 2 years?
Yes. First time. Long time.
You could see the fire in his eyes, everyone. You could you could see like he's feeling it tonight. He's in the zone.
I've been hearing a lot about these podcast things. Like, it seems like everyone can do one, so I'm feeling like I can do this. So
they don't call you king of podcast style for nothing.
Yeah, they do not, and they is you. You are plural, or that I have given you a pronoun apparently.
We all have pronouns, Mike. They're not scary things.
All right. So, Kevin, you had a pretty good idea for what to talk about tonight. So let me let you explain.
First of all, the amount of times that you lead off an episode with your voice going up, going, Kevin, you had a pretty good idea. As if it's insane that for a change, you came up with a good idea. So thank you for presenting it in that way.
It's the gimmick of the show.
So
my first time doing this, it's a gimmick.
So anyone who follows Old Favorite Friday, knows me from Barrel of Monks and Oddbreed, and listens to this show will know that I have despised seasonal creep for the longest period of time. I've been talking about it forever. Seeing pumpkin beers in August is insane to me. And we have beat that drum to death on this show in particular. But I noticed something different this year. Not only were there much fewer brands of pumpkin beers and even Oktoberfest, Marzenfest beers, what have you, on the shelves, fewer individual brands from individual breweries, but there was less of them. I mean, I would see stackers of Pumpkinhead. I mean, just coming out of every orifice of a Total Wine and More. Other stackers of 3 or 4 different things like Pumpkin and other different brands. And this year, I felt like they came later than normal. I wasn't seeing them in August, and there was just much fewer of them. And I went to a couple of the other stores just to kind of see if that was a trend or just the one store I went to, and it seemed to be pretty consistent. And it got me to thinking, we have talked about seasonal beer in the past and kind of how important it was and how it really changed. And it was a unique feature of craft beer. You had Sam Adams seasonal. You had tons of different breweries like Sierra Nevada and the bigger guys doing it. And we had rotating seasonal drafts all over the place. And we saw that go from being such a big deal to kind of like paring down with only a few breweries still doing it, with only a few really important seasons. One of them being the fall season we're talking about here. And I'm wondering, have I been missing a trend of going away even more so of the seasons? And is the seasonal beer dead? If we can't sell pumpkin beer, which was the easiest sell it seemed like for the longest time, what hope do we have for a Christmas beer, right? What hope do we have for a spring lager? So that's what I wanted to talk about.
To answer your hypothetical question that is the focus of all of this, I will start off by just saying, yes, I do think that seasonal, we have seen this over the past few years, seasonal beers are not as important, I think, anymore, with some caveats thrown in there. Fall being one, the Oktoberfest and pumpkin beers, I think, are still important to a lot of consumers. They still look forward to them. But I do agree with you on what I have seen so far this year. I don't think I go to as many stores as you do, but I have noticed far far less of them as I have in previous years. And I think that Christmas beers still have a little bit of pull to them, despite that I have consistently said that winter seasonals are just absolutely have the worst time frame of all of them because of its relatively short span due to Christmas being right at the beginning of winter and people not wanting winter beers after that. But you have stuff like Celebration and up in the Northeast where I'm from. What's it called? Why can I not? Mad Elf is still pretty popular from Trogs up in the Philly area, and people look forward to that one. And the Christmas Ale from Anchor was another one that people really looked forward to. But spring seasonals, summer seasonals, like I feel like we have gotten away from stuff like that. Breweries might put out something during that season, but it's not really marketed towards that anymore.
Well, we can all come up with beers that are seasonal for a brewery that are still popular, right? But as far as like the big season of you see a flood of these kind of beers, I think you're correct in the fact that it really is fall and winter. And even last year, the Christmas beers seemed a little bit less prevalent inside some of the big box stores. But in general, and by the way, we also are going off of our own market. So they might not be seeing this in California or in Colorado. But the big box retailer, the biggest one here in Total Wine & More, have slashed all platform space, save for maybe a few stackers here and there for beer, because of margins and how much better they do on RTDs and how much better they do on whiskeys and wines. So there's just not as much space to do these things. And I think that's a huge part of it. And also the fact that how many cases of Pumpkinhead were these people sitting on for the next 6 months? Because I remember walking into stores last year and seeing 20 case stackers in November, December, still with those cases of beer. So I wonder if some of this is just the fervor maybe has died down in the public, and it's been a while for the retailers to kind of catch up. But we were just having a conversation internally at Barrel of Monks, and we have a newer sales rep, and he was talking about we have to do some different things in the market, and he'd like to make some suggestions of kind of beers that we can have available. And one of my partners at the brewery, Keith, said, "You want pumpkin beer? Just go ahead and say it. Just say you want pumpkin beer." And he goes, "No one's asking for pumpkin beer." And I can't think of the last time I heard that. Even as Barrel of Monks Belgian brewery, never done a pumpkin beer. Every year we'd have 7 accounts ask for one. We'd have tons of people in the tap room asking for one. And so far this year, nothing. So I don't know if the love affair is over. I don't know if the pumpkin spice latte at Starbucks numbers have gone down. Maybe that's a big part of it. I mean, if pumpkin beer is suffering, it just goes to reason the entire category of fall beer would suffer, because it's the straw that stirs the drink.
Yeah, and you say Pumpkinhead because I feel like anyone who is in a market that Shipyard is distributed to knows what we mean, that they're usually one of the first to hit the market super early. And they actually made a campaign probably close to 5 years ago of trying to curb seasonal creep and saying, we will not release Pumpkinhead until September 1st. And that lasted 1 year, them doing that. The very next year, they were back to releasing it. They had then a campaign saying, it's never too early for Pumpkinhead. And it was just like, yep, their sales sucked that badly off of doing that they had to do that. But there was a point with a local distributor who was carrying them at the time, who no longer exists, I believe I had heard they had so much left over, they just held on to it and sold it again the following year, and didn't order any new ones in.
That's awful.
Yeah,
I mean, that beer, listen, I have the dichotomy between how terrible Pumpkinhead is and how incredible Smashed Pumpkin is from the same brewery has always blown my mind. I'm a pumpkin beer. I've always enjoyed pumpkin beers, and forgive me for if anyone that works for Shipyard or has anything to do with that brewery or loves that beer, but I don't. That beer is not drinkable, Pumpkinhead. And to think about a year-old version of people grabbing that, and I got a little nervous this year because I pulled a couple Marzens that off the shelf, Oktoberfest Marzens off the shelf. And I was looking at dates going, this could be from last year, right? On a store like Total Wine and More. And I was having a hard time finding dates on the bottles. And I picked up one, and now it's Paulaner, which has a great reputation, Paulaner Oktoberfest.
Mhm.
And me and Ralph were drinking it. I'm sorry, Ralph and I. And we were picking up some off notes, and it just wasn't as flavorful and as good. We had to sit down, and let me give you a little context. We did a side by side of our Marzen with 6 other Marzens, both traditional German
Sounds like
ones.
a good time.
Yeah. Oh, tell me about it. And Paulaner was our hands down least favorite across the board, and that's a very well thought of beer. And now looking back on it, that's probably a year-old beer. I wouldn't be surprised if that's the reason. And when you especially can't find dates on some of these packages, that's really, really difficult.
Yeah, I mean, you might not have found a package date because it might have just worn off from being a year old. I mean, it's been a little while since I've had a Paulaner, but I remember that being one of my favorites of those of the Munich breweries, and that is surprising to hear that it was less than ideal, and that's the only thing that I can think would be the case. But yeah, this seasonal, the fall season, this is a really different world, a different scope to see this year, with the lack of options out there. I don't know if it's just they didn't distribute it or what this year. Normally, the little indie grocer by me has had Green Bench's Fest beer on shelves. Never saw it. So yeah, I don't know if Green Bench just didn't distribute any or didn't distribute any down here or what. So I was a little disappointed in not seeing that. Like, even that store usually has a good amount of stuff. I think they got like 2 pumpkin beers and 1 Oktoberfest right now.
Now that you mentioned that, Mike, that's getting my wheels turning, right? We are seeing such cuts in. So we're talking about Total Wine and More, which is more of a specialty retailer. But the big dog in Florida is Publix. They sell more beer than anybody else. So if their numbers are down, that's going to affect everybody. And we've seen such deep cuts to the craft sections over the last year or so, 2 years maybe, that I went to try to find Marzens and Oktoberfest beers at my local Publix because I wanted to do this little thing. And I had a couple, and I was looking for very specific beers, and I found two Oktoberfest beers at my local Publix. That's unfair. I think I found 3. One of them was Sam Adams Oktoberfest, which I already had, and one of them was a Marzen and one of them was a Fest beer. And I found,
what were those? Because I only have Sam at mine.
I'm having a hard time remembering which ones they are because I got so many from different stores, but that's my recollection. And what's that?
Go ahead.
No, and I saw no local Oktoberfest or seasonals whatsoever, and I saw no American Marzens other than Oktoberfest. So I would not be surprised if breweries that were previously getting big purchases right? Hundreds of cases if they're even regional, if they're even just in South Florida. You're talking about 250 locations. You're probably talking about a buy-in of 2 to 3 cases a piece for a seasonal. So you're talking about what am I talking there? 600-700 cases. If you're not getting that beer coming down, well, maybe your distributor is not bringing it in just to sell the Total Wine and More and hit 14 locations in the South Florida area and only drop 1 case. So it might not even be worth it. So you could also see the fact of the bigger box places wreaking havoc on that supply chain of seasonal beers. And if I have noticed one thing is that some of the older players in the market for Marzens, I'm seeing less of, and I am seeing several Florida breweries with some distribution in the area, and also several breweries that are popular in other areas of the country, but just haven't been down here as much. Seeing their Marzens, their Oktoberfest, their pumpkins dropped in, but some of the classics not being there. So maybe we have a little bit of a changing of the guard, and because the beers don't have as much sales history, they bought less. There's probably several different factors playing into this.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, my local Publix is a small store, so their space on everything is less, and then you go over to the beer section, and yeah, we're in reset season, so stores are getting new stuff in. Luckily, we're getting into some sets here in our main distributor footprint. But I noticed right when I walked in the door, a Pumpkinhead display. I'm like, they never carry anything Shipyard in this store until now. Like, oh, they only carry Pumpkinhead, and it's always dry right at the front of the store. They never have any in the refrigeration. And I think that's the only pumpkin beer in the store. I don't recall seeing anything in the cooler section, and Sam Oktoberfest is the only Marzen in the batch. So it's crazy. I felt like I used to be able to see like one of the German ones, even if it was like Warsteiner, which is not really typically thought of for one of them, but it's bigger. It would be in there, but I don't recall seeing that at all either.
Pumpkin.
Oh yeah,
always had a presence at Publix, always, and I didn't see it this year. And some of this, by the way, could be things that people are screaming, "Hey, at my Publix, I'm in South Florida, I saw it." I don't know. We're not.
Oh yeah,
we're not at every location, and we also could miss it. But I think that the feeling that you and I have, whether or not the specifics are correct for every location, the feeling is the same. We are overall seeing less volume when it comes to those kind of beers, and it speaks to just the downturn of the market in general, and also the cutting back of SKUs. I mean, this trend is nothing new, but we have had since we were sold to Gold Coast Distributing. They've been pretty liberal with our SKUs and allowing us to have some specialty beers in and outs and things of that nature, and keeping a relatively large portfolio for the size of distributor that they are. And I've have other experience with other distributors of the same size or bigger, and those people cut everything to the bone. They wanted 2-3 brands. That's it. Gold Coast has been great. They distributed 8-10 brands on a regular basis. But in the last couple of weeks, I've been hearing more and more about days on hand. We got to keep days on hand down. So we're not going to pick up this beer. Well, if I don't send in any beer right now, you have 3. So yes, we only sell 5 a month of some of those beers, but one account takes 2, which sometimes they do, and you're almost out. So I understand the purpose of that, but it affects us all. And eventually these businesses do the 80-20 rule and start to cut out things and start to streamline. And whether or not you're in a more liberal, open distributor that's willing to take in more things, or you're with a ultra cut it to the bone distributor, it still seems like everyone's kind of still moving in the same direction.
Oh, that's for sure. And not to get off topic too much, but I feel like a lot of those distributors are more willing to run out of stock than bring in that extra little bit to bump the days on hand up, because I feel like at the end of the day they don't care about that account losing your placement in that account as much as the supplier us do, and they're like, we'll pick it up somewhere else. And
it's definitely a mentality, and we're lucky. I have a really, really good brand rep for Gold Coast who fights for us and does his best to take care of us, and I'm very appreciative of that. But I understand the mentality. If I was in their position, I might be doing the same thing. When my sales rep now comes and says, "Hey, I want to do all these new things," I go, "No, there's no market for that. I'm not going to make a 10-barrel batch of beer to sell 6 Slims. That's not a good business model, right? We need to sell more of the stuff that we're already making at volume, where our margins are better, where the economies of scale are up, and that's a brewery's version of the same thing. And cutting things down and doing less seasonals and less specialty stuff has been something that we've been doing traditionally, or I should say consistently, for the last 3-4 years.
And yeah, getting back to the seasonal thing, like stepping away from fall, because I feel like we have been harping on that a good bit,
Sure.
is I just do feel like the mentality of a four-season approach to distributing special releases like that is dying. I mean, I don't know how much that is true maybe in other areas, but especially in an area that is essentially a 2-season climate. Spring and summer are the same, and trying to differentiate, them with seasonal beers in a South Florida market doesn't make a whole lot of sense to people. And I think that the consumer doesn't care about stuff like that. So, I mean, I feel like those spring and summer beers, especially summer being our down season, I don't think a lot of people are putting stuff out during the summer into distro. They might do stuff in the tap room to try to pull people in and make more money that way. But spring and summer seasonals, I feel like, are about dead on seeing new releases coming from people during those times.
Well, looking at that model of that 4-season kind of model, but seasonal beer reaches more than that. I mean, I guess I look at seasonals as kind of beers that come out from a brewery on a regular basis. And yes, might be ridiculous to say, "Oh, I have 6 seasonal beers." I have a beer that comes out every other month and call it a seasonal, when no, we have 4 seasons, so those can't be called seasonals. Whatever the terminology you want to use for that, reoccurring beers, yearly releases, what have you.
Wait, Smarch is got to be in there. That's 5 seasons,
Well,
right?
March is not a season, March is a month. If you know
But it's
anything
got
about The Simpsons.
Smarch weather.
But I think all of that is what's going away. I see it so much as that there are so few beers that can capture the public's attention long enough to be you look forward to it when it comes out the next year. There are beers made by very popular, very cultish kind of breweries that definitely have that kind of buzz to them, but they don't have that on a grand scale. They're not getting people to freak out. I mean, the second that a beer hits the Total Wine shelf, everyone that loved that beer is going to hate it anyway, right? They're going to think it's mass produced and it's garbage. So by its nature, it has to be in your tap room. It has to be small. And by the way, small could mean that you're doing 200 cases, but you're doing it all out of your tap room. But it's never going to cross over to the masses that way. And I think with the masses, there are just few beers that people are looking at and saying, "I can't wait to have this next year." Even, what would you call it? Like a middle of the road, aware craft beer drinker. Do they know when Hop Slam comes out? Do they know when Goose Island Bourbon County Stout comes out? Or do they just kind of see it on the shelf one day and they're not sure if it was there yesterday and maybe it's new, maybe it's not. Did I have it last year? I'm not sure. I'm not sure how much resonance those beers have with the public that has to buy it to make it a thing.
I think that's a fair question. I think people do have strong connections to brands that they really like, and even for someone who might be middle of the road, there's some people know when those things are. I think this is a good example is as someone who we used to hang out with in our days at Coffee District, a guy named Charlie. He's a writer, and that I would consider him a middle of the road beer drinker. He really enjoys beer, but he wasn't like a geek. But that dude loved Hop Slam, and he knew when Hop Slam season was. It's usually the end of the year or the very beginning of the year, and when Chung would get a keg or some bottles of that, he would be at Coffee District to have that beer. He knew that it was coming, but he might not know when Bourbon County's coming out because it's not something that he has a connection to and a love for.
The big question is, and we're talking about the famous writer Charlie Kaufman, right?
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So Charlie Kaufman, right now, does he still know when Hop Slam comes out? Does he still have that same passion for that beer all these years later? I mean, one of the things that we harp on, and I'm right there with you with Celebration, right? I'll get Celebration the second it is available to me.
Mhm.
There are some Touchstone beers I have that I still have that affinity for, but it's not like it used to be. And maybe it's just because once upon a time, I was a little bit more adventurous in trying everything that came out. We just went through a whole episode talking about all the different beers that came into Florida that aren't here anymore, that we would just bring the bottle shares and just all over. But maybe it's just that I don't have that kind of spirit anymore, or maybe it's because I've gone through it. I've had the rotation and the new beers and the retreads, the beers that have come over and over again. And I'm like, if I miss Hop Slam this year, I've had Hop Slam 100 times. I love Hop Slam, but I'm not missing out on anything huge if I don't get a Hop Slam. Maybe if I get this other double IPA on the shelf, I'll find my new Hop Slam. And if you have that mentality with the current crop of beer geeks, maybe they really have become that ticker mentality that we used to talk about 15 years ago, where they just don't really ever want to have the same beer twice.
I think some, but I think that people also maybe have curated their taste over time and are like you're like I look forward to Celebration. I look forward to X Oktoberfest beer. Like I feel like that's how I am. Like Celebration, I look forward to that beer. The Oktoberfest season of getting to have some Marzens and Fest beers, I look forward to that. But not much else. But I did at one point look forward to Hop Slam. I did look forward to Festina Pesh coming out in the summer.
My God, that's one that I'd love to talk about. Yeah, it's awesome.
I was into a lot of particular seasonals and really looked forward to their returns. But over the years, like it got exhausting, and you just refine your taste and you know what it is that you're looking for. And you're like, I feel the same way with music. Is I love the old records that I loved, and getting into some new stuff can be a bit difficult, and I just don't want to. I want to just go to the hits that I know that I like, and I can be that way with those seasonal beers. Is let me just look forward to those ones coming back around again, just like I look forward to when I can hit those few albums that I want to listen to from that artist all over again.
Yeah, I can understand that mentality. I mean, I'm lucky enough, and you are too, that we do try new beers all the time. And one of the beers you mentioned earlier in the podcast, the Green Bench Fest beer, fantastic. Not an old standby, hasn't been around for a long time, but really, really well made. I had a Marzen from Civil Society with my brother-in-law Brad over the weekend. Fantastic. Just fantastic. I will look forward to having that beer every year now going forward. It's one of my favorite styles. I always talk about Marzens. I also told my brother in a menacing way to go fuck himself because their Marzen was better than mine. And I don't like that, but it's the truth. They did a better job with making that lager. So I'm still hopefully creating some of these beers that I'll look forward to from year to year. I'm wondering what the majority mentality of the craft beer, the self-labeled craft beer drinker is. If they would rather have 15, 20 beers that they look forward to every year and are really excited to buy, or if they're a little bit more like, a cat playing with string and they're just going, I just wanted something new. I don't care about that. I just want something new.
I mean, that was a conversation I had at my first brewery when more breweries were starting to pop up, and the craft beer drinker was a bit more promiscuous and going and trying new things. It was, do we stick to these seasonal beers that we had before, or do we bring in new stuff to try to get those people back? Because they're like, I've had that beer before. Why should I have it? Okay, well, now we have this beer instead. They're like, oh, okay, now I'll try that because that's something new. I feel like that was something that we had to really play with at that point in time, and there are people who probably still play with that idea a lot now. I just think that depending on your size, that it just, I don't think it's even worth it to be putting out a seasonal into distribution unless you can hit, like you said before, that you can put a huge drop in and know that you have the placements for those in big grocers, not just like your Total Wines, who used to be a place that you could drop that stuff on, but you're not going to anymore. You need your Whole Foods, you need Total Wines, you need indie grocers, indie liquor stores, and even like package bars to be able to pick that stuff up. And I think that it's too tough out there for someone who is a 2 to 10,000 barrel brewery to really hit all of that. That you might as well just make a smaller batch, keep it very localized, mostly in your tap room. And if you can get some placements in places within 20-mile radius of your place, maybe even smaller, that's what you do. But I don't even think it's worth it for someone like our size to be putting out a lot of these seasonals into distro anymore.
Yeah, what you just described, the first situation, the first scenario you described, takes so many man hours. Did I say? You were talking about instead you have to have so many placements, so many different. You need to have Whole Foods and Fresh Market and Total Wine. You have to have all these people on board with it. The time and energy it takes to coordinate all that, and the limited amount of money you make on package, if you're a 2 to 10,000 barrel brewery, doesn't make that a feasible thing. Right? You have to have multiple people busting their ass for a month to try to get that stuff to happen. And then you don't make that much money on it. So yeah, it's a tough proposition. We were talking, I came up with a brilliant idea, by the way, while you were speaking. And it also ties back into the last episode where we were talking about older beers. And I think Festina Pesh, is the perfect example of this because it was seasonal and also one of those beers that I don't think they make anymore. At least they don't distribute down here anymore. We start a company that, I don't know, I don't even know what the distribution laws. Imagine we can distribute to every state or 30 states, whatever. And we go to individual breweries and we say, okay, this beer that literally every craft beer drinker has nostalgia over, We want you to make it just for us. One batch, whatever your smallest batch is. Hopefully it's 20 or 30 or 40 barrels. It's probably for Dogfish Head 700 barrels, but who knows? And you can get it one time only, never again. But you have to sign up and be part of the monthly club. And every month you get a 6-pack, a 12-pack, a 24-pack, whatever it is of that beer. It comes direct. It's a premium. I mean, it's like super expensive. It's like $100 a case. I don't know what it is. But you go and you get Festina Pesh, you get Dogfish Head Black and Blue the next month, you get Smoke Jumper the next month, you get, half the beers that we were talking about, Keller Weiss from Sierra Nevada, whatever. That's a business. I would sign up for that, and I, one of those like box companies that is on every single podcast that they promote, whatever box, monthly box of something, box of awesome. That would be the thing. I would pay. I'd put $50 to $100 a month on that right now to have a 6 to 12 pack of one of the great beers of all time just show up on my doorstep every month, no questions asked.
Well, while you were saying that, I came up with an idea that is very similar to that, but kind of different in the fact of creating a brewery. Let's just say, for shits and giggles, Old Favorite Friday Brewing, and you license retired beers from breweries and make them yourself, selling them out as like one-time drops, and being like, this is Festina Pesh from Dogfish Head by Old Favorite Friday Brewing. This is Old Brown Dog from Smutty Nose from blah blah, and just pretty much be a cover band of brewing.
These are both great ideas. I mean, we'll never do any of this stuff, but these are both great ideas.
If you want to give us money to do something like that, hit me up. I know that there is no one who wants to provide money for something like that, but just putting it out there.
There's a lot of people that would pay a good sum of money to have some of these beers, and that's the thing. The beers that we talked about last week, and some of the beers that have disappeared from the seasonal rotation because of all the things we're talking about today. So many of those beers are as good or better than anything that is on the store shelves today.
Yeah.
There was a really cool post from Don't Drink Beers that was specifically targeting Florida, and it was, Florida breweries be like, and then it was a picture of the Kool-Aid Man in front of like a craft beer, like in front of a bar at a craft brewery. And there were, 100 comments of people making fun of Florida and all the smoothie sours and all the bullshit beer that we're known for. And when you mentioned Festina Pesh, I was like, better than every single one of those beers ever made by any Florida brewery that claims to be a sour. Yeah. I mean, objectively, bar none, hands down, go home. Festina Pesh wins. And I know there's a lot of people in the world that feel the same way. They're just not the loud. They're part of the quiet majority, not the vocal minority.
Yeah. I do want to go back real quick to last week as well, because when I put the episode out there and I asked people chime in with, in your area, what stuff that you miss, and there was a lot of fun responses from people. Cool. Like a lot of them were localized to their areas, like people pointing out beers from Great Lakes that they miss. There was some Southern Tier stuff, like people talking about Matt and Finn's, and Hop Sun. I remember Gemini, one of their double IPAs, being a big fan of that.
Gemini was great, yeah.
Someone mentioned that I mentioned on the show was Hop Stupid, and that he could get a bomber of that at his local grocery store for $3.99. He's like, it was the fucking deal. And it was really fun to see people chiming in with their stuff on that. So to anyone who who got involved in that conversation. Thank you so much. That was a lot of fun. I said on Twitter, that was an episode that I was a little iffy on, thinking that people would actually care about it, but you guys did care, and you got involved and engaged on Twitter talking about it too. So thank you for that, and thank you to Kevin for coming up with the idea.
I had to convince you on that one. But the great thing about this, Mike, is that we have transitioned with the beer industry to being the old men, right? Like, we grew up in the industry, we were drinking craft beer in our 20s and 30s, and now we're into our early 40s, and I believe by the process of time, we'll get older as time goes on. I've been told. And
I've read that I'm going to die someday. Is
that's
that true?
Nope, not even true. Don't even think about that
Oh.
ever again. Burn whatever you read that said that. What if your phone? Burn that. But thank you. But we are part of that generation that gets to kind of one of the generations that get to go old with craft beer and become nostalgic for these things, and be the old man shaking their fist at the cloud and talking about how much better it was in our day, while still talking about incredible beers that are doing, or breweries that are doing incredible beers these days too. But yeah, I love talking about the nostalgia of that, and I think that it wraps in nicely with the seasonal stuff, because I think what you've said and some of the points you've brought up, I think seasonals are pretty much they're on their last legs. And I'm not saying that next year we're not going to see any pumpkin beers, but with the market pressures and the profitability for breweries, how much sense does it make? And we'll probably see a big reduction of the market, and in 5-10 years it'll explode again, because people go, remember when everyone loved pumpkin beers, and they'll all blow it back again.
Yeah, like if big grocers like your Publix are going to get away from carrying seasonals, Total Wine's cutting back on that stuff. Even if Total Wine remains, they're going to remain a big place to get a lot of different types of beers. There's only going to be so much that they can help keep afloat in that before, like you said before, even just to give to the 14 or so ones down here, that's like, if they take 2 cases, it's 28 cases. That's fucking nothing. Like, no one's going to go to the trouble of canning or bottling 28 cases for distro, or maybe a handful of others for some smaller spots like down here, ABCs or whatnots. It's with so little places being available to take seasonals, breweries are then going to not put them out to distro, and then it's just going to continue to shrink until it doesn't exist anymore, except for those handful. Like, we'll probably see Sam Adams seasonals and in the apocalypse. Like, they'll still be somehow rotating through.
Sorry, I was muted. We are currently going through the apocalypse, Mike, and we are seeing Sam Adams seasonals out there, so that makes perfect sense. And you mentioned the beers you look forward to. I still look forward to Sam Adams Marzen. Their Oktoberfest, still fantastic. And when we did our blind tasting of 6 different Marzens, Sam was I think top 3.
I wanted to ask you what was your top one?
I remember top 3. I remember the worst one, but I'm having a hard time remembering the one that everyone liked the most.
What
I know
was
that
your top 3?
No, I'm saying I remember that Sam was in the top 3.
I thought you said I remember the top 3.
No, I remember that one was in the top 3. I'm having a hard time remembering having a hard time remembering all the beers that we tried, because I've tried those plus several others in the meantime. I remember Brooklyn was in there, but was in the lower end of things with their Marzen. If I pulled anything else, it would just be out of my ass. So I won't try.
Did you
try.
have other German ones in the
We had 3 German and 3 US, and then ours.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Like I remember for the longest time my favorite Marzen was from Eyinger. Their Oktoberfest was so good.
Eyinger's another level. They're one of the best that I've
And it's
had
funny because
that
they're
for
not one of the
years.
Munich breweries.
Yeah.
And I just loved theirs so much. From the Munich ones, like Paulaner, I've always enjoyed, but Spaten and Hacker Shore are probably my favorite of those ones with their Marzens.
I'm not sure if I've seen either one of them this year. I may have, I may not have, but they're ones I've had in the past. But I'm looking for ones to feature on Old Favorite Friday right now, and I've got a couple lined up. I have a pumpkin beer lined up, and I have a Marzen lined up. I try not to do like one every week because that would just be overkill and maybe not leave me something for next year. But I've featured so many of them over the last couple years that yeah, I am with with what's going on with the seasonal beers. I'm worried I'm going to run out. One day I'll have no more beers to feature.
Yeah.
I'll have to retire and open my Old Favorite Friday brewing with you, Mike, at the helm.
Of the marketing, not of the brewing.
You're doing everything, Mike. You had the idea. Get to work.
I quit. Fun thing that I saw, I think it was last week, Sierra Nevada posting like, here's a truckload of fresh hops from this season in for making celebration. So we're getting close. I remember it now comes to me as like, I remember right after the boys were born, I had my first celebration of that year in 2021. So I know that the beginning of November, I'm gonna hopefully be able to find celebration, and I'm getting so stoked that we're a little more than a month out from that.
Other than celebration, is there another winter, Christmas, seasonal that you look forward to every year, personally?
Offhand, no. Because I was never a big Anchor Christmas person. I didn't like all of the spicing and stuff to that. It just didn't, didn't ever resonate with me. And I can't think of too many other winter seasonals off the top of my head. Like I mentioned Mad Elf when I was in PA. And that's not a beer that's my jam. I know a lot of people like it. I had one on draft somewhere when it was winter time, and I was like, okay, cool. I had a Mad Elf this winter. I'm good for the rest of the winter. But yeah, I can't really even think of anything.
I'm a really big fan of Daedalus.
Old Fezziwig. There we go.
Oh, Old Fezziwig, and they probably still don't make it, but Holiday Porter.
Yeah,
were two of my favorite beers for that time of year for sure. But Daedola still not. My favorite Belgian Christmas ale, other than mine, for sure. I'm not sure. I get a chance to drink Still Not. I feel like every year because Bill McPhee has a
500 of them.
Yeah, he has like a reserve, like the gold reserve, but you just open like a vault, and there are Christmas beers from every Belgian brewery going back for a 7-year vertical, and he puts them out every year for us to try. But I'm not even sure if it's distributed down here.
I did enjoy St. Bernardus Christmas Ale, but I mean I haven't had that in a long time. But I haven't had like a desire to, even though sometimes I've seen it and I'm like, oh, I like that beer, but I don't want that right now. But
it's a very particular kind of taste, you know. I mean, and people, there's a lot of people who love our Christmas beer, and they're fine with a bottle. They're fine with having it once a year too, which is completely understandable. That's one of the reasons I love Celebration so much. I mean, that doesn't have to be a Christmas beer or a seasonal winter beer. That can just be a beer. And I love that aspect of it. I think the same way with Old Fezziwig. I think the same way with Holiday Porter. And you know, we've had winter beers that have been put out by breweries for generations. I mean, I can't remember in the Blackwater series from Southern Tier, one of those beers, creme brulee, chocolat, oat. I don't remember what it was, but one of them was the winter seasonal, and it had nothing to do with Christmas, but they were delicious. You mentioned that Hop Slam, you believe, came out at the end of the year, as a winter seasonal at some point. Nothing to do with Christmas.
Yeah, no, I think Hop Slam didn't come out at like before Christmas. I think it was usually right after Christmas, New Year-ish time.
Still,
Like,
I mean, that's a
it
1
is
week
winter,
difference.
yes.
It's a 1 week difference, Mike. Don't split hairs on me.
And that's where going to back to the point I made earlier is that the winter seasonal beers get the short end of the stick so much because we essentially take fall beers all the way up to Thanksgiving. And then we're like, all right, now it's time for winter beers. That's a month like before Christmas. And then you are like, I'm over winter beers, even though winter just started 5 to 6 days before. And you still have 3 months left of what is technically winter. And it's just I love that Celebration is not a beer by style that screams out, this is winter. It's an IPA, but its branding is made towards the Christmas holiday season. Celebration is meant for the holidays. The word itself, the can is bright red. The bottle label was red. Like it gives those thoughts to it. You're not thinking about having that beer in late January, even though it would be perfectly fine to have that beer in late January.
True. I endorse that statement.
All right. Anything else that you want to add on to this before we head into last calls?
No, I think we covered everything. Everything I wanted to cover, at least.
Okay. All right, let's head into last calls. The point in the time of the show where we give each other an unspecific amount of time to talk about whatever it is that we want. Beer related, not beer related. It is uninterrupted, unopposed, unobjected. I'll start things off this week. I want to say 2 things really. And because it's my show, I can do that. Real quick, I want to send out a big thank you to by the time that this show comes out, my former coworker Jason, who is moving to Colorado with his girlfriend and starting a new life over there. He's been in our cellar for a little over 2 years, and he's probably the first person that I got to have practically wholly training. Like I wholly trained him on the brewing industry. Like I know that he learned a lot since I've left there from other people, but I gave him his start. I taught him a lot about the cellar. I also probably taught him a lot about just the mentality that you need to have in this industry and just culture. And the dude is a sponge and then puts all of that into action and has been a fantastic worker and has grown so much in only 2 years. I am super proud of what he has done at Copper Point. And Colorado, you're getting a really good person, a great worker, and please take care of him out there. He's moving to the Denver area, and I'm super excited for him and what is next for him. I also want to give a little bit of thought into a quote that I recently read. This goes back to an episode that we had about local and what does that actually mean. I came across this quote on Kodo Design's Instagram. Kodo Design are friends of the show who run a design firm out of Indiana that is focused on food and beverage branding. And this quote is, Gen Z wants to know you're involved and support the community through investment of time and money. I've been saying that they want companies to be proactively local. Craft beer has always had a rebellious aspect to its collective personality, but rebellion doesn't seem to be very salient to Gen Z. In that case, you can still be a rebel, but you may be able to reframe what you're rebelling against. The thing I love about this is that there are people out there who still do very genuinely care about local, but they want you to show that you're local, not tell that you are local. Saying you're local can only get you so far, but to be actively involved in your community and in your neighborhood and show that to people really resonates with them, those who do care about that type of thing. And it seems like the younger crowd can sniff out the bullshit a lot easier than maybe some others do. And I really love that because it gave me a little bit more sense in the idea of local, something that I do want to really love, but hate it from a just purely marketing bullshit standpoint. So kudos to them for posting that quote. It's not from them specifically, but I really dug that and really made me look at things a little bit differently when it comes to local. So yeah, stop trying to be bullshit and tell people that you're local because they're going to just call you on it by not buying your product. Show that you're local and be involved in your community.
Well done, Mike. Well said. So I will often recommend TV shows, podcasts, things of that nature. And I just finished up I believe it was a 6-part series from Malcolm Gladwell in the Revisionist History podcast. Most people know Malcolm Gladwell from Blink and The Tipping Point and several books that have been major mainstays in pop culture. Malcolm Gladwell is brilliant, an incredibly erudite, thoughtful human being, and Revisionist History is an incredible listen. But he did a 6-part podcast series on gun control and made his thoughts on this and his feelings on it well known from the get-go, but also did a great job of pointing out the bullshit on both sides of the gun control debate, of talking about how gun control developed, or I'm sorry, how the gun debate developed in this country from the very beginning off of precedents of laws that maybe didn't, of situations that didn't even happen in the past, and also the framing by anti-gun people that is wrong and inaccurate and misappropriating different information and misleading people. And I was really impressed by the humbleness to state your claim, but also show the flaws on your side of the argument, which I will always be in awe of. Anyone who can stand there and say, yes, this is a flaw. I believe in this, but this is not the right way to go about it. So I highly recommend, you're obviously a podcast person if you're listening to this, Malcolm Gladwell, Revisionist History. If you're not already a fan, check it out. There's great episodes. Another episode that happened very recently was Malcolm Gladwell breaking down how he got completely owned in a debate. This was, I think, on last season's podcast, but talking about how he did terribly because he was a smug prick and thought that everyone would just agree with him in the first place, and just being very humble and very, very real about how that actually happened. Things that I really respect in people: admitting they're wrong, admitting their faults, pointing out the actual problems in their own arguments, which is everything. So it's a great example of that to check out Malcolm Gladwell stuff.
Awesome. Kevin, you want to plug anything?
I have to plug Wizard and Pink, our beer that we do for Breast Cancer Awareness Month every single year. All the proceeds from cans, draft sales in the tap room. It is a Belgian style white ale with raspberries. We are partnered with Making Strides Against Breast Cancer, an arm of the American Cancer Society. Two of our partners are radiologists by trade. And this is a thing that's we're very, very passionate about. And we try to raise as much money as we can every single year. So if you can, over the month of October, come into the tap room, if you're local, obviously, and pick up a 4-pack of Wizard and Pink, buy a draft, even do a crowler, whatever you want to do to help support. Or if you see it out there in the market and you're Total Wine and More in your Whole Foods or on draft at your local bar, pick up a draft. The more they buy, the more that we can donate. And it's something that we look forward to every year. It's really important to us.
What's the charity one more time?
Making Strides Against Breast Cancer, which is an arm of the American Cancer Society.
If you're not local and you would like to help, just go donate to them. I'm sure that they take donations directly.
Thank you, Mike. That's why you're better at this than me. You can also go to Making Strides website and search Barrel of Monks if you want to donate on our page, but that's not necessary.
We don't. Sweet, that's awesome.
Yeah, we don't care. We don't have to get the glory. Making Strides Against Breast Cancer. Another thing that I'll mention, thank you, Mike, is that Making Strides is not Susan G. Komen. They are not a marketing company. They are not about pink washing everything and spending money for visibility. The money that is raised goes to people affected by breast cancer. It helps them travel to the locations they need to get treatment. It helps them with lodging and airfare. It gives money directly to people and funds research and development. It's one of the best charities. You can look this up. You can check different websites. They're one of the best places. If you care about everyone cares about that. That's not fair. If you have the disposable income to donate to a cause regarding this, one of the best places you can do it, Making Strides Against Breast Cancer.
Awesome. I too would like to tell you to go donate to Making Strides Against Breast Cancer. I don't want to plug anything else other than that because I think that that's an awesome thing. And other than that, just the stuff about our social. We're at United We Drink on Twitter and now on Blue Sky. We're at United We Drink Pod on Instagram and Threads, and we're on all of the major podcast streaming services. Wherever you find podcasts, we should be there. We also have our ways that you can help support the show financially, such as our web store, unitedwedrink.com/store, with shirts, buttons, stickers, and all of that fun stuff. We also have the Brands We Love page on our website, unitedwedrink.com, where you can go check out some awesome stuff. If you make a purchase through the links there, it goes and helps support the show, such things such as Made in Cookware, Trade Coffee, Liquid Death, water, and so on. Other than that, we'll be back here in a couple weeks with another new episode. Thank you, everyone, once again for joining us, and we'll see you then. Cheers.
Cheers.
Ladies and gentlemen, the next train is now arriving on the bound track. Stand way to the platform edge. This is a Manhattan-bound L train. The next